of the Ras Leela seemed to the gopis to last only a few moments, the night of Kirtan at Shiva's house seemed brief to Mahaprabhu and his followers. At the end of one such night, Mahaprabhu placed all the Shaligram Shilas on his lap and sat down on the altar where he revealed his divine nature in a wonderful form and accepted all the food offerings given him by his devotees. On another occasion, Mahaprabhu engaged in his Mahaprakash Leela, the pastimes of great epiphany, at Shiva's Angan. This is recounted in chapter 9 of Chaitanya Bhagavat's Madhya Khanda. On that occasion, he withdrew his devotional mood, stopped all his divine trances, and openly revealed his divinity, sitting on Vishnu's throne for 21 hours. At his signal, the devotees performed the Abhishek ceremony reserved for the King of Kings according to the scriptural regulations. The devotees made their offering of flowers and gifts, and Mahaprabhu stretched out his feet and accepted them without artifice. He then gave all present a blessing, fulfilling their personal desires. In the course of this 21-hour pastime, Mahaprabhu appeared in the form of all the previous avatars. One evening, Shiva's mother-in-law hid in the corner of the courtyard from where she hoped to be able to see the Lord Sankirtan pastime. Being the indweller of all beings, the Lord was aware of her presence and kept repeating to his companion that on that day he felt no joy in singing the holy name. This was very disquieting to the devotees who, suspecting that some outsider might be hiding there, starting to search through the house. When Shiva found his mother-in-law, he was mortified and taking her by the hair, led out her of the courtyard. Only those who have received the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have the right to witness his pastime. On another occasion, a certain brahmachari who subsided on milk alone asked Srivas for permission to see Mahaprabhu's kirtan. Srivas knew that he was Satvika in his habit, so he invited him in. Srivas had the brahmachari hide inside the house, but Mahaprabhu, the indweller of all being, was well aware of what was taking place. He said, quote, I don't know what is wrong with Kirtan today, but I am feeling no pleasure in it. I think that there must be an outsider here somewhere. Srivas became afraid and said, a brahmachari who takes only milk asked if he could watch your dance. He was so eager and I knew him to be austere, so I let him in. Mahaprabhu became angry and answered, one cannot attain devotion to Krishna without surrendering to him, and certainly not by eating a milk diet and engaging in other superficial austerities. Make him leave. The Brahmin fearfully left the house, but still asked if he could have a partial look at the Lord. The most merciful Lord asked him to his side and placed his lotus feet on his head, telling him not to make a show of his austere practice out of pride. When Mahaprabhu put on the play about his Vrindavan pastimes at Chandrasekhar's house in Mayapur, Srivas played a part of Narad Muni. Advaita took on the role of a clown or Vidushak, and Haridas Thakur played the police officer. Mahaprabhu himself first played Krishna's wife Rukmani and then Adya Shakti, while Nityananda played the part of an old woman. The Lord again sat on the altar in the mood of the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, and later as the mother of the universe. In the spirit of affection for his devotee, he gave them his breast to drink from. Offenses to Srivas. Mahaprabhu's kirtan went on at Shiva's house with the doors locked every night for a full year. During this big Mahaprabhu's Kirtan went on at Shiva's house with the doors locked every night for a full year. During this time, many non-devotee Brahman tried to make fun of Mahaprabhu and his associate. Several of these Pashandis became envious because they were unable to see what was going on and insulted the devotees. One of them was Bhattacharya Brahmin named Gopal Chapal, who decided to destroy Shiva's reputation by placing a plate of offerings intended for Kali on his doorstep. These included liquor and meat, red, red hibiscus, java fool, flour, and red sandalwood. In the morning, when Shivas opened the door, he saw these items and started to laugh. He loudly proclaimed, quote, "Look everyone, I am Shakta. I have been worshipping the goddess all night long." His better behaved neighbors were fainted to see what had taken place. They removed the offending items and then purified the doorstep with cow dung. As a result of this offense to Srivas, Gopal Chapal was afflicted with leprosy. One day, when Mahaprabhu came to the bank of Ganga to bathe, Gopal Chapal approached him and prayed to be freed from his disease. Mahaprabhu angrily answered him, quote, "O sinner, enemy of the devotee, I will not save you. I will have you eaten by a worm like this for millions of births. You made it seem as though Shivas had worshipped Kali, so you will dwell for million lifetime in the hell known as Raurava." Chaitanya Charitamrita 1.17.51 and 52. After Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas, he came once to Kulia, the site where
we'll read later. See. No, put क्या था ना?
1.17.51 and 52.
You can come there later. Just read now. Yes, yes.
1.17.51 Translation. O sinful person, envious of pure devotee, I shall not deliver you. Rather, I shall have you bitten by these germs for many millions of years. Yes, purport.
What is the chapter called?
The pastimes of Lord Chaitanya in his youth. Purport. We should note herein that all our suffering in this material world, especially from disease, are due to our past sinful activities. And of all these sinful activities, actions directed against a pure devotee out of sheer envy are considered extremely severe. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted Gopal Chapal to understand the cause of his suffering. Any person who disturbed a pure devotee engaged in broadcasting the holy name of the Lord is certainly punished like Gopal Chapal. This is the instruction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As we shall see, one who offended a pure devotee can never satisfy Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu unless and until He sincerely regrets his offenses and thus rectified it. Text 52. You have made Shiva's Thakur appear as to have been worshipping the goddess Bhavani. Simply for this offense, you will have to fall down into hellish life for 10 millions birth. There are many tantric followers who, wishing to eat meat and drink wine, practice the black art of worshipping the goddess Bhavani in the crematorium. Such fools also consider the Bhavani Puja to be as good as worship of Lord Krishna in devotional service. But such abominable tantric activities performed by so-called Swami and yogis are herein condemned by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He declares that such Bhavani Puja for drinking wine and eating meat quickly plunges one into hellish life. The method of worship itself is already hellish, and its result must also be hellish and nothing more. Many rascals says that whatever way one accept, one will ultimately reach Brahman. Yet we can see from this verse how such person reach Brahman. Brahman spreads everywhere, but appreciation of Brahman in different objects lead to different results. In the Bhagavad Gita 4.11, the Lord says, Ye yatha mam prapadayante tam tathaiva bhajamya aham. I reward everyone according to his surrender unto me. Mayavadis certainly realize Brahman in certain aspect, but realization of Brahman in the aspect of wine, woman and meat is not the same as realization of Brahman that devotee achieve by chanting, dancing and eating Mahaprasad. Mayavadi philosophers, being educated in partly knowledge, think all sort of Brahman realization one and the same, and do not consider varieties. But although Krishna is everywhere, by his inconceivable potency, he is simultaneously not everywhere. Thus, the Brahman realization of a tantric cult is not the same Brahman realization as that of a pure devotee. Unless one reaches the highest point of Brahman realization, Krishna consciousness, he is punishable. All people except Krishna conscious devotee are to some proportion pashandis or demons, and thus they are punishable by the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated below. Should I continue from this book?
Yeah, just here you go. Let me go back to the were reading for.
Yes. O sinner, enemy of devotee, I will not save you. I will have you eaten by a worm like this for millions of births. You have made it seem as though Shivas had worshipped Kali. So you will dwell for million lifetime in the hell known as Gaurava. After Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas, he came once to Kulia, the site where offences are forgiven. Kulia is the present-day town of Navadvipa, also known as Kola Dvipa. This time, when Gopal Chapal begged him again to be forgiven, Mahaprabhu was compassionate and told him to ask forgiveness of Shiva's Pandita.
तो लेके रह रहे
One has to ask forgiveness of the every devotee one has offended if one wishes to be freed from the offences. When Shivas forgave Gopal Chapal, he was liberated from the effect of his offences. The unfortunate Devanand Pandit, though Devanand Pandit, though a great lecturer on the Srimad Bhagavatam, was devoid of devotion. One day, Shivas Pandit went to listen to him lecture, and being a great devotee, was deeply affected by the Bhagavat verses and started to cry in the midst of the assembly. Devanand's students, who were all Pashandis, forcibly dragged Shivas out for disturbing the audience. Even though he saw His students acting in this way, Devanand did not stop them. Thus, he too became an offender to the Vaishnava. Mahaprabhu later roundly rebuked Devanand for his inaction on this occasion. However, Devanand had a good fortune to come into association of Vakreshwara Pandita, who taught him Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's true identity. He thus became sorry for the offense he had committed and received Mahaprabhu's mercy. According to Gaura Gonadesha Deepika, Devananda is Nanda Maharaj quotes Pandit Bhandari Muni in Brajalila. The Qazi tries to break up Kirtan. Mahaprabhu was always Mahaprabhu was always Amani Man Dena. He asked for no honor for himself but always showed respect to others. He would embrace everyone and with great feeling ask them to chant the holy name
I'm
of the
leaving
Lord.
Maharaj.
These
You were here last night?
Sorry, Maharaj.
Last night you were here.
Yes, Maharaj.
Where did you sleep?
I slept in this town.
In bed from the Lord's house.
No, another Maharaj had come to ISKCON Bhagavad Mahavidyalaya, so he had come to drop Maharaj.
See which one?
I don't know the name, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Please bless me, Maharaj. I've taken a new project, so they have given me to lead the project, Maharaj.
Okay. I get it.
Thank you, Maharaj.
These converts would then engage in the loud chanting of the holy name in the accompaniment of mridanga and the conch shell. Materialistic persons consider them to be nothing other than the musicians who were worshipping Mahamaya on the wrong day and would insult them with various blasphemous statements. One day, the local magistrate or Qazi, known as Sarauddin Chand Qazi, was walked by and saw the scene. Hearing the loud noise of the kirtan, he became irritated and angry. He went to Shiva's house and broke the mridanga and had some of the devotees beaten as a warning. He said, quote, "If anyone does this kirtan again, he will be punished even more severely." This prohibition brought great satisfaction to all the Pashandis of the town and they joyfully continued to mock the devotees. When Mahaprabhu received the word of the incident, he became very angry. He ordered the devotees to take torches and musical instruments and join him for a demonstration against the Qazi's edict. Telling them to be fearless, he separated the devotees into several groups and then led the procession along the bank of Ganges, himself dancing at its head. Thousands of men, women, children put aside their housework to join him and follow the Sankirtan procession. When the miscreant heard the sound of the kirtan, their hearts began to tremble. Meanwhile, when Chand Kazi heard that thousands of Hindus were approaching his house, he ran inside to hide, trembling with fear. Upon his arrival, Mahaprabhu asked some respectable person from the neighborhood to kindly inform the Qazi that he was there and that he meant him no harm. When the Qazi heard the polite way in which Mahaprabhu had addressed him, he was attracted and came outside. He addressed Mahaprabhu as nephew, since by village relationship he was Nilambara Chakravarti's brother. After a few moments of cordial conversation, the Qazi recounted the following story. Quote, "The night I broke the mridanga, I had a dream in which I saw a most frightening figure, half man, half lion. He came and sat on my chest and threatened to rend it asunder the way I had broken the drum. When he saw how afraid I was, he calmed me down and told me that he would forgive me if I promised never to interfere with the kirtan again." Chand Kazi then showed the scratch marks that had been imprinted on his chest by Nrsimhadeva claws. He then promised that neither he nor anyone from his family would ever stop Sankirtan again. He also became Mahaprabhu's devotee. The tomb of Chand Kazi is in Balanpukur, by which stand a very old Golok Champa tree. Both Hindus and Muslims offer their respects to the tomb of Chand Kazi.
ना ना हाँ पहले रश्मि कर लो
More Kirtan pastimes at Shiva's Angan. After a night of Kirtan at Shiva's house, when Mahaprabhu returned to external awareness, he would go with all the devotees to bathe in the Ganga. Sometimes the devotee would ceremonially bathe the Lord at Shiva's Angan. On the Shiva's servant girl named Dukhi would watch Mahaprabhu's ecstatic dancing with tears in her eyes. She also performed the service of filling jugs of water from the Ganga for Mahaprabhu's morning bath. One day Mahaprabhu observed her devotion and was pleased. He changed her name from Dukhi to Sukhi. Another day, Shiva's only son died while Sankirtan was being performed in his house. Shiva was afraid that the sound of mourning from the women's quarter would disturb Mahaprabhu while he was engaged in the singing of the holy name. So he went directly into the house and tried to quiet the women by explaining spiritual truths to them. When they still did not stop their loud lamentation, Shiva threatened to throw himself into the river and drown if they did not stop making noise. This had the desired result. Later on that night, however, the kirtan came to an stop and Mahaprabhu said, quote, "Something does not seem right. Has some tragedy taken place in the Pandit's house?" Unquote. Shivas answered, "How can anything be wrong when I have your smiling face in my house? When I have a smiling face in my house?" However, some of the other devotees said, "Prabhu, Shiva's only son died in the evening about an hour after sunset." Mahaprabhu asked, "Why did not no one say anything before now?" The devotee answered, "Lord, Shivas told us not to because he was afraid that it would interfere with your pleasure in Kirtan." Mahaprabhu said, "How could I ever abandon devotee who love me to this extent?" and started to cry. After this, he went inside and sat down beside the child's dead body and brought him back to consciousness. He asked, "Child, why do you want to leave the house of such a great devotee as Shrivas?" The dead child answered, A few days that I was to spend in Shiva's house are over, and now I am following your wish in going elsewhere. I am a living being without any independence. I cannot go against your wishes. Please be merciful to me that I never forget your lotus feet wherever I go." When Shiva's family member heard the child speak such wisdom, they immediately forgot their distress and stopped mourning. Mahaprabhu said to Shivas, quote, "From this day on, Nityananda and I will be your son. We will never leave you." Shiva's visit to Puri. After Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas and was living in Puri, Shivas would come with other devotees each year to stay with him for the 4 months of the rainy season. It is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita 2.9.255 and 6. Advaita Nityananda Mukunda Datta, Shivas Vidyanidhi Vasudev Datta Murari Gupta and all the Mahaprabhu's other devotee servants met with him in Puri every year and stayed for 4 months. Mahaprabhu engaged in various pastimes in their company. Shivas was a participant with Mahaprabhu in his Leela of cleaning the Gundicha temple and Rath Yatra. He was the principal singer in the second Kirtan group or some or Sampradaya, who, whose chief dancer was Nityananda Prabhu himself. Sarup Damodar was the lead singer and Advaita Acharya, the dancer in the first Kirtan group. In the third, Mukund Datta sang while Haridas Thakur danced. Govind Ghosh sang in the fourth with Vakreshwara Pandita dancing. The fifth Sampradaya came from the village of Kulina and Ramananda and Satyaraj were its principal dancer. The sixth group was from Shantipur in which Achyutananda danced. The seventh group was composed of residents of Shrikhanda in which Narahari and Raghunandan took the lead role. When Mahaprabhu wished to dance, the seventh group all came together. On one such occasion, the king Pradap Rudra was watching Mahaprabhu's wild dancing while, while learning on his servants while leaning on his servant Harichandan's shoulder. In meantime, Srivas came and stood in front of Harichandan to watch Mahaprabhu himself. The king's servant kept pushing the deeply absorbed Srivas, telling him to move so that the king could see. Srivas became irritated at the repeated disturbance and finally turned around and slapped Harichandan. Harichandan became angry and was about to hit him back when the king stopped him, telling him how fortunate he was to have been touched by the hand of a devotee such as Srivasa. One day, Srivas and the other devotees, led by Advaita Prabhu, were glorifying Mahaprabhu's name, form, pastimes, and activities. Mahaprabhu became angry and left the scene, but later accepted defeat and acquiesced to their desire to glorify him. Shivas moved to Kumaratta. After Mahaprabhu took sannyas in Katwa, Srivas and his brothers found it impossible to remain in Navadvipa, where everything was full of painful reminders of the Lord. They moved to Kumaratta, near the birthplace of Ishwarapuri. Even so, Srivas and his brother made annual trip from the Kumaratta both to Nilachal and to see Mahaprabhu and to Mayapur to visit Sakhi Mata. On one occasion, Mahaprabhu came to his guru's birthplace and showed his respect by taking some dust and wrapping it in his clothes. From there, he went to Shiva's house. All the members of household joyfully received him and his companion and became absorbed in their service. Mahaprabhu noticed this and said to Shiva, quote, "You are a householder with a large family. You have to earn money in order to maintain your family. Otherwise, how will you able to do so?" Shivas first replied that he had no wish to make money and then clapped his hand 3 times. Mahaprabhu asked him what he meant by clapping his hand, and Shivas answered, quote, "I will fast 1, 2, 3 days. Then, if I still get nothing to eat, I will tie a jug to my neck and jump into the Ganga." Mahaprabhu responded to Shiva's statement by giving a roar and repeated the blessing he had given him before in Navadvipa. He said, "Even if the goddess of fortune has to go for begging, you will never know want in your home. Lord Krishna himself provides everything that his exclusive devotee needs." It is mentioned in Gita 9.22, "I personally assume the whole responsibility of acquiring and protecting the necessity of my fully dependent devotee who are always absorbed in thought of me and who worship me exclusively." Also in Chaitanya Charitamrita 3.2.34 and 35, it is mentioned, even after Mahaprabhu remained permanently in Puri, it is said that his divine appreciation took place in the 4 places: in Sachi Devi house, wherever Nityananda was dancing, in Shiva's Kirtan, and in the home of Raghava Pandit. These apparitions took place because the Lord is naturally attracted by the love of his devotees. Shiva's Pandit appearance day is the 8th day of waning moon, Krishna Ashtami, in the month of Chaitya, and his disappearance day is celebrated on the 10th day of waning moon, Krishna Dashmi, in Ashad.
There's a present.
आज क्या है
Appearance.
appearance
Yes, sir.
appearance
मैंने तो बुक में पंचता तो
बतला सकता है
ये पढ़े
Yes, ma'am, I got that. Shri Shrivas Thakur. Jai Jai. All glories to the world's many devotees, headed by Shrivas Thakur, Sri Chaitanya, is their life and soul. 6.1. There is an interesting story in Kavi Karnapurna Chaitanya Chandrodaya Natak, wherein the Lord asked Shrivas Thakur if he remembers how he was saved from death and how he was at that time infused with Narada Shakti. Shrivas answered that he does remember and proceed to tell the following story. Before the Lord came into my life, Shrivas said, from childhood to 16 years of age, I was merciless, offensive to Guru and Brahman, and just had a generally restless heart, hard as wood. I was proud, conceited, and even in my dreams, I never heard or chanted the Lord's glories. Then perhaps, because of some unknown previous pious act, a kind-hearted person came to me in a dream and said, O Brahmana, in name only, O restless-hearted one, who can give you advice? You will not listen to anyone. Still, I tell you directly, you have only 1 year of your life ahead of you. Then you will die untimely. Do not throw your short remaining period of life away on useless things. The next day, awaking at dawn, Shrivas remembered the good advice he received in his dream, and he was unhappy that his life would be short. Quote, I decided then and there, he said, that I would give up all my misdeeds. I made a vow to try to understand the ultimate goal of human life, and soon thereafter, in the Narada Puran, I found this verse. Harir Nama, Harir Nama, Harir Nama eva kevalam, kalo naste eva gipir anyatha. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. I considered this a direct message of Lord Krishna. Shrivas continued. And I immediately gave up all materialism, and forgetting everything else, I took shelter of Lord's Hari name alone. With great peace, while I waited for that moment of death, which was supposed to come less than 1 year later. It was during this period that I went to the home of Devananda Pandita, a renowned teacher of Srimad Bhagavatam, hoping to hear his lucid commentary on various texts. While listening to the story of Prahlad Maharaj, Shrivas told to the Lord, I predicted death of time. I predicted the time of death had arrived. I lost consciousness, and under the spell of that final moment, I fell from the Devanand's balcony on the courtyard below. Then within precious moment, someone rescued me from the jaw of death, understanding that I was still alive. I was overcome with gratefulness. Again I stood, trying to keep my balance. My dear friends brought me to my home. I realized that at that time, oh Lord, you brought me back to my senses. You saved me and infused me at that moment with Narada Shakti. The Lord confirms that this was true, and Advaita Acharya concurred, adding that Shivas is glorious. He is home of glory, and therefore he is called Srivas Thakur. It is to be understood that the above story, as told by Kavi Karnapurna, is simply a leela by which one can understand that Srivas is Narada. Although it appears that Srivas was infused by Narada Shakti at the particular moment in time, such a view is merely an expression of how an eternal truth manifests in the world of three dimensions. As the year passed, Srivas and his three brothers, Sri Ram, Sripati, Sripati, and according to Prema Vilas, there was a fourth, Nalina, helped Mahaprabhu enact his pastime of Sankirtan by offering their home as his humble abode. These four brothers worshipped Sri Krishna by chanting his name profusely, for they were in, for they were influenced by Shiva's change of heart, and they were known to bathe in the Ganga 3 times a day. Shivas and his brother were raised by their father Jaladhara Pandit in the district of Sri Hatta. Later, they relocated to the west of the Ganga and became famous throughout the Navadvipa area as the great devotee of the Lord. While in West Bengal, they regularly attended devotional gathering at Advaita Acharya house, where the Srimad Bhagavatam was being recited and where they performed the congregational chanting of Krishna's holy name. The brothers gradually became close friends with Jagannath Mishra, with whom they would chant and listen to the Bhagavatam. But they did not know that Mahaprabhu would soon be born to the wife of his pious Brahmana. Only Srivas, who was the natural leader of his three brothers, understood what was to come, for by the strength of his devotion, he could understand that Sri Krishna was going to soon appear in the house of Jagannath Mishra. Shiva's Pandit's wife was known as Malini Devi. She was a very close friend of Sachi Devi, Mahaprabhu's mother, and was always helpful to her, especially when she gave birth to the Lord. Shivas and Malini gave Sachi Devi and Jagannath advice on how to raise their newly born son. In fact, they were just like a second mother and father to Lord Chaitanya. As Nimai, Mahaprabhu, grew into boyhood, he sometimes asked the aging Srivas Pandit difficult and convoluted questions just to antagonize him. But Srivas, not wanting to waste words, would just leave the spot without bothering to argue with him. Such pastimes of scholarship started to agitate the devotees of Navadvipa, who felt it unfortunate that a bright boy like little Nimai would spend his time in useless arguments instead of life of devotion. Understanding the mind of Vaishnava, the Lord offered respect to Srivas whenever he saw him. This gesture of humility served to pacify the devotee. One day, Nimai was walking alone with 5 or 6 of his students. He was dressed in fine silken clothes of yellow color. One day, Nimai was walking along with 5 or 6 of his students. He was dressed in a fine silken cloth of yellow color, which made him appear like Krishna's twin. His lips were red from chewing betel nut. By seeing his lotus face, more beautiful than 10 million moons, the people of Navadvipa would remark, this person is undoubtedly more attractive than Cupid. Shiva's Pandit happened to be coming the other way. When he saw Nimai, he laughed to himself, impressed that anyone could be so alarmingly beautiful. As usual, Nimai offered his respect to Srivas, who said to the Lord, may you live long and prosperous. But this was not all that he said. Still smiling, Srivas looked the Lord straight in his eyes and asked him, tell me, where are you going? O crest jewel of vain and arrogant. Without worshipping Krishna, just what do you expect to accomplish passing the time as you do? How is it that day and night how is it that day and night you are simply absorbed in academics and mundane pursuit? Think about it. Why do people study? Ultimately, the goal of knowledge is happiness, and happiness can only be acquired through service to the Krishna. If by scholarship one does not gain devotion to the Lord, then how will that learning help him? It becomes simply a tedious endeavor which in the end is nothing but a waste of time. If you have actually learned something of substance, then begin your worship of Sri Krishna now. Please don't uselessly waste your time in these vain pursuits. You have studied so much. Now use your knowledge to worship God. These ideas pleased Nimai to the core of his being. Hearing Shiva's word, the Lord smiled and replied to him, hear me, Shivas. By your mercy, I will one day come to worship Krishna. If the devotees are kind to me, then I will definitely attain devotion to Sri Krishna's lotus feet. Saying this, he proceeded toward the bank of Ganga in the light-hearted mood, accompanied by his students. Soon after this incident, Nimai went to Gaya and received initiation into Vaishnava Dharma. One day after his return, Shivas came to Sachi's house and Mahaprabhu offered his most respectful greetings. By seeing a devotee of Shiva's caliber, Mahaprabhu's devotional sentiments increased. His oily hair stood on end, tears flowed from his eyes, and his body trembled. Such symptoms of ecstasy were now appearing in him regularly. Together with Srivas and his brother, the Lord decided to transform Shiva's home into a second Vrindavan, where the love of Radha and Krishna would resound in uproaring and uncontrollable kirtanas. Every time the Lord visited Shiva's home for chanting and dancing, his love of God increased 1,000 times. For a full year, he held kirtan sessions there every day. The compound of Shiva's Pandit, also called Bhojabhanga Danda, is situated about 600 feet north of Mahaprabhu's birthplace. Here in Shiva's Anand courtyard, as the area came to be called, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, along with all his confidential Navadvipa associates, first inaugurated his Sankirtan movement. Srivas and his brother used to perform kirtan all night long with mridanga and kartal in indescribable ecstasy, and after Mahaprabhu's initiation, he and others joined them. Shiva's Angan is an area of rasa. Here, Mahaprabhu and Nityananda dance maddening abandon and exchange intense mood of love with their devotees. It is said that the force of Nityananda's rhythmic step as he danced was so powerful that it sounded just like an earthquake. Mahaprabhu would dance both on the ground and in the air. He would at times touch his head with his feet oblivious to the outside world. When either of them would crash to the ground as a result of their jumping and dancing, it would sound as if the earth had collided with another planet. They would laugh and cry and dance and shout. In the impossible to, it is impossible to calculate the bliss of the devotee who were fortunate enough to associate with the Lord in Shiva's Anand. These pastimes were being performed while the sweet sound of Raga continuously heard within the compound of Shiva's Pandit. Accompanying Nityananda Prabhu, accompanying Nityananda Prabhu, Mahaprabhu, Shivas Thakur and his brother were Advaita Acharya Gadadhar Pandit, Sarup Damodar, Pankaj Vidyanidhi, Haridas Thakur, Murari, Jagdananda, Nandana, Buddhimata Khan, Narayana, Govinda, Gopinath, Jagdish, Sridhar, Sadashiv, Brahmananda, Sri Bhaga, and others. None of them could live without the Sankirtan that occurred in Shiva's Thakur courtyard. Here, in Shiva's Angan, Nityananda Prabhu offered Vyas Puja or worship of the spiritual master to Sri Chaitanya. Shivas strictly followed all scriptural injunctions, organizing everything according to the Lord's desire. He obtained an abundance of milk products, rice, fruits, grains, vegetables, ghee, incense, scented oil, camphor, sandalwood, fragrant flower, tulsi leaf, and manjari, and all the required paraphernalia for all elaborate performance of Vyas Puja. In Shiva's Angan too, Lord Chaitanya revealed to Nityananda his six-armed form, which held a bow and arrow, a flute and a staff of renunciation, and a water pot. Immediately upon seeing this transcendental form, Nityananda Ram went into ecstatic trance and started to dance like a madman. Finally, he came crushing to the ground, losing consciousness. When he came to, he and Mahaprabhu began to dance madly as if nothing had happened. Sometimes they cried piteously, and from their eyes flowed rivers of tears. They also roared as loudly as the thousand lions. Then, in a playful mood, they each would try and take the dust from each other's lotus feet. But because both Nimai and Nitai Prabhu were clever and quicker, neither of them would succeed. It was like an unending competition that would never know fruition. And yet they remained happy as if the goal of touching each other's feet was achieved merely by endeavoring. All of this was done in a fun-loving spirit. It was here in Shiva's Angan that Mahaprabhu showed his divinity to his most confidential associate. He exhibited his Mahabhav Prakasha, which means that for 21 hours he remained continuously absorbed in the mood of Supreme Lord, as opposed to his usual mood in the identity of a devotee. During this pastime, the Lord exhibited his different incarnations. At that time, the devotees headed by Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar and Shivas performed elaborate worship of Lord Chaitanya. The devotees brought Ganga water in a big earthen pot, and after staining it, they added camphor, musk, rose oil, saffron and tulsi tea. Nityananda first bathed the Lord by pouring pure scented Ganga water on the Lord's head, while Advaita Acharya and Shivas Thakur chanted the auspicious Purusha Shokta prayer from the Vedic literature. One time, Lord Nityananda stopped dancing during Kirtan in Shiva's courtyard and announced that he was not feeling his usual sensation of supreme ecstasy. Why am I not feeling happy? The Lord asked the devotees. Why is my heart not overflowing with bliss and joy? The assembled Vaishnavas looked at each other, hoping that someone would step forward to resolve the Lord's dilemma. At that moment, Shiva's Pandit started to inspect the entire compound, for he suspected what the problem might be. Just then, hiding behind the bassinet, he found his wife's mother, who had secretly made her way into the compound to take part in the Lord's Leela. Not considering his mother-in-law qualified to be present, he removed her from the compound. Only the most intimate devotees were allowed into Shiva's courtyard, for if one were not sufficiently advanced in spiritual life, one could not understand the activities that took place there and could in fact lose one's mind. On another similar occasion, a Brahmana who resided in Navadvipa, widely known as very emblem of renunciation because he subsisted only on milk without taking any other food, managed to make his way into Shiva's confidential courtyard. Such occurrences were rare, for Mahaprabhu would begin Kirtan only after first bolting the door so that no non-devotee could enter. Nonetheless, the Brahmana who refrained from milk would daily ask Srivas Thakur if he would enter the courtyard to see the ecstatic dancing of the Lord. Quote, if you would be merciful to me only once and let me go inside, I could see the Lord dancing. Let this be the success of my eyes and my life as well. In this way, he would regularly express his desire to see the Lord in the midst of the Kirtan. One day, Shivas told the ambitious Brahmana, I know that you have always led a pious life, that you properly practice celibacy and take only milk as your foodstuff. I don't know of any sin that you have performed in your entire life. If it were up to me, I would let you into the Kirtan. However, it is the order of the Lord that only the most dedicated devotee can join me chanting in my courtyard. So if you want to go, you have to remain in hiding. This is the best service I can give you. The Brahmana agreed to go, even with a particular stipulation, and so Srivas took him to the courtyard and concealed him behind the screen. That night, the Lord I can read. That night, the Lord of the entire cosmos danced like a madman. His most fortunate associate, surrounding him on all sides. Krishna, Ram, Mukunda, Murari, Bhimani. The devotees sang in great eagerness. Nityananda grabbed Gadadhar by the arm and danced in circles, while Krishna Prabhu ran in all directions, laughing in unbridled ecstasy. The devotees were all absorbed in the joy of Kirtan, shouting Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. At the very climax of the chanting, the Lord stopped suddenly, somehow perceived that an outsider was in hiding. He looked at everyone present and began to speak. Why is it that today ecstatic love has not come to give up its shelter? I suspect that some stranger had come within our midst. I cannot fully understand what is going on, so please let me know the truth as soon as possible. And the Lord fell silent. Shiva became fearful when he saw the Lord move, and he began to utter the following words. Mahaprabhu, no atheists or unqualified people are here today. There is only one Brahmana who is hiding, but he is the most qualified personality. He drinks only milk and does not take any other food. Really, he is a simple person. He has great esteem for you and was very eager to see your dancing. He is the man who can conceive from faith. This, my lord, is the truth out. Take him out right away. Why has he been given the honor by dancing? It is that simply by keeping this one can attain devotion to me. At this point, the Lord raised his arm and pointing his finger to Shiva exclaimed, "It takes more than 20 mills to contain my lotus feet. If the keeper of
Krishna,
the temple takes
Krishna,
shelter of me, then I am his and he is mine. Know this for certain. However, if even a sannyasi does not recognize his dependence on me, then he is not mine, he is worthless." This is simple truth. What austerities were performed by Gajendra, Hanuman, and Gopa of Jagat? Please tell me. To this, there was no response. The devotees were silent. How do you think these devotees minus one big center of peace, then cannot cross over the ocean of existence? So remember, one cannot attain peace by performing mundane austerities, however great they may be. By drinking milk, one cannot attain peace. For your audacity, I will now destroy everyone. Prepare yourself to see this here and now. Hearing the Lord said, the Bihar became frightened and ran frantically, leaving his hiding place so everyone could see him. As all the devotees turned and looked at him in amazement, he thought to himself, "What I have seen today is worth any punishment. Nothing can compare to the great mercy that was given to me as a result of hiding in this sin." Mahaprabhu, knowing the mind of the frightened Brahmana, felt kindly disposed toward him, and placing his lotus feet on the ground outside, he addressed him, quote, "You know simply rely on austerities as your means of loudly. Hari Hari. After this, they fell to the ground like a golden stick, offering their full obeisances. Whoever faithfully listens to these pastimes of pleasantly, undoubtedly Mahaprabhu and with continuous association to their people. Also, less than 45 devotees sometimes make their way to Shiva's courtyard and observe the Lord's pastime as illustrated by Shiva's mother-in-law and by the Brahmana who only took milk, and also by Shiva's Shudra servant Vishnu at Chandrasekhar's Bhavan, another place where immediate pastime occurs. Only the most confidential associate and servitor of the Lord Chaitanya was allowed control. The unity associated with Shiva's Anand is attributable in large measure to the special mercy of Shiva's Thakur, who allowed virtually anyone into his home as long as he or she was the servant of the Lord. Such mercy is faultless and is a great gift of such great visible humanity. Shiva Thakur displayed his mercy to a demon named Gopal Kapal, who placed meat and wine outside Shiva's door just to antagonize the devotee. As a result, Gopal contracted a severe case of leprosy. Mahaprabhu told him that it would only be cured by the forgiveness of Shiva himself. Naturally, Shiva forgave him, and in his soul, he was not only cured but also allowed into the inner circle of devotees, enjoying the dancing of Shiva's army for the rest of his life. The devotees learned much trouble from their association at Shiva's angan, and on one occasion this educational experience came from the death of Shiva's son. This pastime is mentioned only briefly in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but is described in more detail in Chaitanya Bhagavata. Bhakti Vinod Thakur gave more work as follows. In the evening twilight, within the privacy of Shiva's Pandit courtyard, Lord Chaitanya engaged in Hari Kirtan with the most advanced devotee in the world. Becoming madly intoxicated with ecstatic love, the assembled devotee completely forgot themselves and instantly began to dance and chant wildly, completely surrounded the Panchtattva. At that time, within the inner chamber of Shiva's house, one of Shiva's sons, he suddenly died without any apparent cause. Due to the shock of losing the boy, the Nalini and the neighboring woman began to lament and cry like mad women. The testimony of this loud cry after retribution, which was good for the devotee had great love for Shiva's children. Entering the inner chamber, Shiva began to pacify the woman by giving them simple instructions that were as sweet as nectar. He said, "Look here, respected ladies, you all lament needlessly. What kind of happiness can possibly exist when one has ecstatic love for Krishna? Whoever has Krishna for his eternal son never has to lament for anything. But if one has become attached to the temporary pleasures of the material world, then everything is lost and the peace is inevitable. Look, you have all come into this world for the purpose of worshiping Krishna. For now, you should all become situated again in that eternal absolute truth. As long as you are in the body, you should cultivate love for Lord Krishna, knowing Him to be your real self, real friend, and your real life and soul. All the attendants of this body, namely brothers, friends, husband, and son, should be accepted as being only temporarily limited. They will all die in due course. Whoever wants to hold on the husband or son will in fact not be able to
मुसेन सिंहाया भागवतदायिनी धन्यकाशी पूर्वक्षः शिलाशङ्कन्नखालय धनुसिंह परपुनसिंहा यतो यतो यामि ततो नृसिंह पायेन सिंहा हृदयेन सिंहा नरसिंहमयं शरणपदे तव करकमलभरेण खमदभूतसिंहं ललिता जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
why are you exclaiming, my son, in great pleasure? Krishna has
सुंदरे कृष्ण कृष्ण भक्ति सदेति सत्पौर्णं
Krishna has ordered all things to take place according to his own free will. We do not have to leave the old religion and it is foolishly
ध्याय
specified
के
to the
शिक्षा
repetitive things that we do. Therefore, giving up all your lamentation, just listen to the ecstatic chanting of Krishna's holy name.
कृष्ण नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण कृपा करे
Then the Christian finally stopped and lost his and said, why am I feeling some sadness here? I pursue the At that point, the devotees waited to the Lord. Oh no, what has happened? Why did not inform me of this calamity when it happened first? Hearing this word of the Lord, Shiva suddenly began rolling on the ground, crying out, please hear me, oh Lord, I am unable to tolerate anything that interrupts the ecstatic mellow of your voice. The birth of my son has died, oh Lord, and that has not really affected me. Even if all my son were to die, I would still get more than enough satisfaction by seeing you. I will certainly die on this spot if I were to intercept your calamity, O Lord. That is why I did not inform you of it that moment, for I was braving the calamity of disturbing your ecstasy. The Lord, my Lord, if you will kindly grant us permission now, then we shall take the boy's body away and perform the final funeral rite. Hearing this from Shiva's Pandita, the actual father of the boy, Mahaprabhu broke down and began to weep quite piteously. The Lord then managed to compose himself, thinking, how could I possibly abandon such loving servitor and go elsewhere by taking sannyas? If I were to do so, my heart would certainly split. Then the Lord ordered the household member to bring the boy's body out into courtyard and they immediately compiled. Mahaprabhu addressed the
लीजिए
boy
आरती
directly.
आरती लीजिए आरती
Tell
आप
me, dear boy, whatever prompted you to leave here so suddenly, thus giving up the association of your young. Please tell me, dear boy, whatever prompted you to leave here so suddenly, thus giving up the association of your loving father. After the Lord spoke to the boy in this way,
Krishna
everyone surprised
Preyasi
and the boy began to offer prayers to the
Jam
Lord.
Vishnupat
Shiva soon
Prabhansa
said, my dear
Prabhaskacharya
Lord,
Stotra Shashvita Siva
you are
Prabhu
without
Swami
a doubt
Prabhupada
the
Ki Jai.
supreme absolute truth.
जय
The
विष्णुपाद
living and
से
eternal
कोई
truth.
बाज का चार्य स्टोत्र भक्ति सिद्धांत सृष्टि व विष्णु कोश विष्णुपाद से जय विष्णुपाद प्रसन्न परमहंस परिवार का चार्य सचिदानंद विष्णुदास महाराज जय विष्णुपाद प्रसन्न परिवार का स्टोत्र से जगन्नाथ महाराज की जय सर्वम
Thus I have given up my inherent spiritual nature, falling down these
रूप से मैं बंधा चढ़ना सिद्धि को और मस्तान दस प्रकोशन को
I have been captured by illusion within this mundane world. Now, as a result, I
जिंदगी
am
जय
forcefully tossed
श्री श्री
about
राधा
into the
कृष्ण
world
गोपिका स्वामी राज गौर महाराज की
according
जय
to this fate.
ब्रज
I have
वृंदावन धाम की जय
brought
कृष्ण
into
राम की
Shiva's
जय
house to appear as
नवदीप
his
मायापुर
son
धाम की
by
जय
taking
चंद्र
birth in the
धाम की
womb of his
उपस्थिति
wife
की
Manasi.
जय
But
हनुमंत
indeed,
तुलसीदास
according to
दर्शन
my
की जय
predestined fate,
जय
I
लक्ष्मण
must now
राज
leave
लक्ष्मण
this
की
place. I cannot
लक्ष्मण
remain here
जय
any longer, even if I wanted to. Your desire is most powerful, dear Lord, whereas my desire is my desire is most feeble. For I am simply an
नाम
insignificant for you, so whatever you send me next, oh Lord, I
दैव
will certainly go to become someone's son,
और
or husband, or father, or daughter. However, I know that all these material relationships do not possess even one scrap of eternal truth. For only you are the eternal friend and guardian of all the souls. Shiva son continued, I have no idea what kind of pious parent I must have grown to be born as the son of great devotee like Shiva's Pandita, and that within the holy abode of Navdeepa. Thus I myself am amazed that I have had a great fortune of actually being able to see and touch your lotus feet. O Lord, if it is your desire that I should take another birth, O Lord, I humbly request your Lordship to kindly allow me to be always situated in transcendental loving service of your divine lotus feet. Seeing this, the boy felt kept silent. All the devotees witnessing the incident could not believe their eyes and ears. Shiva's Pandit, whose family gave up their lamentations and were overwhelmed with great happiness. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then began to speak with very sweet words. He said, "My dear Shivas, you are actually my eternal servant. Indeed, I am serving in this world only due to